Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Worldview Truth. Well, Disney has done it again. If they were to write a book on the fastest way to drive a company into the ground, I think Disney would be definitely, they could probably sell millions of books and probably get themselves out of the trouble they're in. But this is Randy Osborne with Worldview Truth. I have in the studio today Kevin Stembridge. And Kevin, you'll find out here in just a few minutes why I have him in the studio. But I'm going to read something to you. This is coming from Disney's Bob Iger. Now, Bob Iger is the rerun CEO of Disney, because who was the last one that?
Bob Chapek.
Yeah, Chapek. Apparently, they didn't like the way he was driving the company in the ground, so they picked Bob Iger to continue that process, is my opinion. So what this is an article. This is on July 19th, and it was actually put out by New York Post. And this is the title of it. It says, Disney CEO Bob Iger in damage control mode over possible sale of ABC and ESPN. Okay. Now, they're looking to start, and when a company does this, by the way, when they start selling off assets and or companies, that's a major red flag. Investors, it's a red flag for investors. Investors are going to start bailing when they see this kind of stuff. But there's a rumor they did that. I don't know if you remember, they were supposedly going to build this new facility in Orlando, and they said it was because of the governor is the reason that they didn't do it. Well, they didn't do it because he didn't have the money. They were running out of money, and that's the reason they didn't do it. They won't talk about that. But I'm going to read this article. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to read some excerpts of this article. Disney's Bob Iger was forced to do damage control over spilling plans to possibly sell all or part of money-bleeding channels such as ABC, ESPN, that has just recently come out. Iger, who last week got a 2-year extension to run the company into the ground, it doesn't say that, I'm sorry, to run the company after retaking the reins last year, huddled with senior leaders of Disney's TV properties on Tuesday, according to sources that had some knowledge of that. Iger met with the senior leaders of the television group and reaffirmed his commitment to the value of the business and also ABC News. So they had a discussion about this, is what happened. And it got out, it got leaked out. So now he's back doing damage control and saying, oh, no, everything's doing great, and we're making so much money that we can't even find it, and we're doing absolutely fantastic. So, and it goes on to say this on the article, the meeting came days after Disney's boss made some uncharacteristic, candid remarks to CNBC's Dave Faber, in which he said Disney's traditional TV business may not be the core to the entertainment giant. And he went on to say that they may swirl off or sell off ABC and ESPN. They also own other organizations such as FX. They also own National Geographic and some other things. Well, the problem with Disney, and it's been with Disney, is it used to be a family organization. It was family oriented, and this is my perspective. I want to get yours here in just a minute. But Disney was a family organization. Even when I grew up, I went to my senior trip was to Disney World. Okay, and that was not long after Disney World came about. I won't give you that date, but it was a family-oriented organization. You went to Disney. That was just a cool thing. Take the family, and it's family-friendly, family wholesome. You don't have to worry about bad influences and whatever. So a lot of families, especially conservative families, Christian families, would go to Disney because that was kind of a big deal. Well, in recent times, Disney has proceeded to go after children. And this is the issue I personally have with Disney. They can do all kinds of weird stuff, but one of the things that they cannot do is they cannot try to sexualize children, and that's where that's my take on this. This is where enough is enough. I am no longer. I cannot support Disney in any way, shape, or form. And instead of them saying, "Oh yeah, we kind of made a mistake. We need to back off of that," they're putting their heels in, and that's the problem I have with this. Is they're not saying, oops, some bad decisions, we'll back off. Instead, they keep putting this stuff into their movies. They keep putting it into their characters. I mentioned on a podcast not long ago that this was a video that was leaked internally with Disney. Some of the executives, that their plans were to make 50% of their characters, trans or LGBTQ plus XYZ, whatever. That was their long-term plan. And when you start seeing that, you're like, no, we're not going to do that. Those Disney characters, Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, it was a great character. It was great for kids. It actually had value to it. There was some values that they good over evil, all that kind of stuff. But now their goal, apparently, according to internal communication, their goal is to sexualize children. I mean, that's kind of what they're after. And they got rid of it. And tell me, you probably know more about this than I do, but they got rid of a lot of their shows and stuff. They just killed a bunch of them. But there's a lot of them they didn't, and some of them they're really, really pushing, and a lot of them are just bad stuff. I mean, they've got all kinds of LGBT characters in these cartoons now. It's not safe for parents to let their kids watch this stuff anymore because it's sexualizing their children is what they're doing. But you have been a longtime fan of Disney, and I just want to get your take on what you think has happened, because you have watched it start degrading over a pretty short period of time. It hasn't been that long, I don't think. So just kind of give me your take on it and what you have seen has happened over just recent years with Disney, and what turned you off when you start saying, we can't do this anymore.
So for us as a family growing up, Disney was just something that we would do on Saturday nights. We just watch one of the things on there, watch The Wonderful World of Disney, or just gather around and see something. We took a trip to Disney when I was, I think, 4 or 5 years old. My parents actually went there on their honeymoon. So again, talking about that date, not too long after it opened.
I was probably there.
And so that was a special thing to them. But we went as a huge group with great aunts, great uncles, grandma, grandpa, just a big family trip. And I never forgot the memories that I made there. And I didn't go again until I was 21 years old. So there's a long period, but I kept wanting to go back. And the neat thing for me was we had a lot of different aspects of Disney. Of course, there were the movies that we grew up with, from the old ones that were like the classics, to the first ones with Mickey Mouse, up to like the live action ones with like Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone and Swiss Family Robinson. And you would watch these movies and they were entertaining, but you never had to worry about there being cursing or there being nudity or there being things that should not be in family entertainment. Right. And you'd go to the parks, and the neat part about the parks was that they would bring these movies off the screen and put you into them, whether you were riding on a pirate ship, sailing over London with Peter Pan, or whether you were going through a completely original ride like Pirates of the Caribbean and just seeing what it was like. And it was just a place that was meant for families to have fun. There were those that would argue and say that they promoted things like rebellion and things like that a long time ago. But it was not what we see today, where there was actually huge moral and sexual implications in what they were doing, and where they were basically exposing kids to things like this, right. And exposing families to it. And just the in recent years especially, I've actually stayed away from a lot of the more modern Disney films, and not just because of the most recent ones where you have like lesbian kisses, or you have the first gay character in a movie who has a boyfriend. It's not even those. There were ones where I was just seeing an emphasis on the family being kind of shattered in a way. They were starting to have a lot of movies that were about families that were in conflict with each other. I saw about 5 minutes of Turning Red one time, and the only part that I saw was enough to make me not want to see any of it. And it was where a girl was actually fighting her mother, and like they were these super powered forms, and like these panda creatures, and she was actually fighting her mom as if her mom was the villain of the movie.
Wow.
And it was literally just, and the whole thing was that it ended up with the mom realizing that she was the one that was wrong.
Of course.
And
The kid was always right. All the kids are always right.
right. And the thing was, even when movies early on, when I was a kid, would show teenagers rebelling against their parents, there were always consequences for those teenagers. It wasn't like they got everything they always wanted.
Right.
And what I saw starting to happen within the last, I would say maybe 8 to 10 years, is that as they start trying to make new content, a lot of what they're doing is remaking their old content and taking out anything that would have been socially inappropriate or politically incorrect. And it kind of made me sick a little bit, because it's taking the things that made them famous and they're saying, oh, we're sorry for that, we shouldn't have made this. And I'm thinking, the funny thing is, these new remakes are bombing. They're not doing well at all, because they're destroying the thing that made them famous. They're taking something that captivated children and families all across the world for years, and they're saying, oh, we're sorry for this and we're sorry for that, and we should make this character a lesbian instead, or whatever. And they sneak things in, and you see it happening. I remember when they did the remake of Beauty and the Beast a few years back. There was this huge boycott of it, and the main thing was that it was going to be introducing one of the first gay characters. And I was thinking, how can you put a gay character into Beauty and the Beast? There's no
Doesn't
cause
even
for
make
it.
logical sense.
So I did watch the movie because I wanted to see how on earth are they even going to incorporate this? Like, what is this threat that we need to be so afraid of? And you would blink and almost miss it. It was
Very
a
subliminal.
person that wasn't even a main character. It was literally a background character that had nothing to do with the plot of the movie. And yet you see him ending up in women's clothes at one point. And instead of freaking out about it like he did in the animated version,
Right.
he instead smiles and walks off and is told to be free. So, I mean, red flag for me right there. I'm like, that's not what happened in the original, and yet here we are saying, well, what if we did this? What if we made undertones of this? And I started to just have these red flags going off. I was like, I hope they learned from their mistakes. Like, now I know people boycotted it for this reason. And I mean, it's not as bad as people made it out to seem, but it was enough to be cautious about and say, oh, but we saw it happening more and more in the movies, especially, not necessarily the parks. I mean, a lot of people, one of the hardest things to, I guess, let go of for people that have been Disney fans for years is going to the parks, because they have so many memories there. It's not just a VHS tape, that shows how old I am, or a DVD that's going in, or a Blu-ray, whatever they have now, that you're watching for a few minutes with your family and then taking out. And if there's something in it, like rebellion, you can talk to your kids about and say, did you see they had consequences, and like, you don't rebel. But this is, with the parks, it's memories that you've made over
Right.
several years. So you don't want to all of a sudden just take that and say, oh, it's like I have to pretend that I never made memories there, or I never had these special things happen there, or we never had a special family trip there, or something like that. It's like, you don't want to see that and villainize it,
Right.
or say like, oh, we did something really bad. But at the same time, it's what you're supporting. And I've noticed myself, the last time that I went to the parks, just about maybe a year and a half ago now, was just that there was a whole difference in the environment of it. It was probably one of the last parts of Disney to really start going downhill. You would go there, and a lot of people probably said, if they hadn't been in years, they probably thought you walked through the main gate and saw pride flags and drag queens everywhere. And that wasn't the case.
Right.
You would go and you would still see the same characters. You would still see parades like you saw before. You would see stage shows and things like that, but they were all still pretty family oriented. And it was usually about things like friendship or things like celebrating the anniversary of the company or something like that. Pretty harmless stuff. You would even see they would have the taking down of the flag each time, and they would usually have a veteran come and either like lead in the pledge to the flag. They'd have the barbershop quartet do God Bless America and things like that. And you'd see stuff that you're like, wow, it's still kind of family oriented.
Sure.
And so it was kind of like a distraction. Especially from my part of this, it was like a distraction from what was actually happening in the company. It was like playing on our nostalgia and playing on you've been here for years doing this. You love the parks. You love these rides. The food stuff, all these things
Sure.
that are Disney things that you can only do there. It's like that's what pulls you in. And it's like you see stuff happening. You see these movies starting to sneak things in and these TV shows. And it's like, you have that struggle, like, I don't think I can, it'll get better. I think that was my prevailing thing was, it'll get better. It will get better. They're going to realize from their mistakes. But the more that you see, last summer they had on Disney Plus, they had the Pride special, and they had a famous drag queen that was on there and basically talking about how to find the content on the channel that would help them to celebrate Pride and stuff. There was some kind of new thing that they released on Disney Plus called Launchpad Shorts or something like that, or Launchpad Studios, and everything in there was like rainbow colored on the outline of it. And then it was all these stories that incorporated
Disney
elements
Plus.
of that.
Disney Plus now, that's specifically geared toward who? Who's it geared toward?
It's geared towards pretty much everybody, really. I know it's marketed as like a family thing, but it started out as basically their way of releasing everything that they had at one time. So you could watch the very first Mickey Mouse cartoons, you could watch the Silly Symphonies, you could watch Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, all the way up through what they had just released. But then they started adding original content to it, and that's where it started to get shady, because the new stuff they were adding had a lot of elements of that.
Could you see families allowing their children to watch Disney Plus?
When it first came out, yes.
I mean, they would would they not kind of, well, it's Disney Plus, you can watch this.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of your
yeah.
your
I
space.
think people that are unaware of what's going on or are turning a blind eye to it, they would still probably do that. When it first came out, the interesting thing is when they first started announcing Disney Plus, that was right after or right around the time that they acquired the rights to Fox Studios. And that's when they started. They actually, when Disney first came out, or excuse me, Disney Plus first came out, they had, it was all predominantly their family content.
Gotcha.
Then when they acquired Fox, they were able to pull in the mature side of Fox Entertainment's movies,
Right.
shows, and they actually had to put parental controls on it at that point. I remember the day that I got the email to say, like, if you want to access this content or whatever, you have to come up with a PIN. And every time that you push on your character or logo to sign into the streaming platform, you would have to put in your PIN. And I was kind of sad the day that happened, to be honest, because I was like, Disney shouldn't have to have parental controls.
Right.
You shouldn't have to. And that wasn't even because of the LGBTQ stuff that was being promoted. It was just, there were movies, I mean, even from like the 80s that were coming on here that had all kinds of bad stuff in it, and you don't want your kids watching it.
Could you picture Disney movies even 20 years ago having to deal with that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And so, and some people would argue and say, well, that's the Fox side of things. They acquired it. But the problem is they are starting to make content that is going along with that,
Right.
or that is similar to that. And I've noticed that they're tending to want to push more towards an adult audience in the films that they're making, especially when you look at like Marvel and Star Wars, which Star Wars, again, Star Wars was something we grew up in our house watching with our dad. He loved Star Wars, the original trilogy. And so we would watch it all the time, me and my brother and my dad. And we were pretty excited about just all of the characters and stuff. And my brother and I had the toys and stuff. We play with them. And then the prequels came out and all that. That was still under George Lucas. And then when the rights went to Disney, they decided to make 7, 8, and 9. And immediately you saw some just... basically everything was changing to be politically correct. They basically teased everyone in the first trailers for episode 7 that it was going to be a guy who was the next Jedi, and then all of a sudden when you watch the movie you're like, oh no, it's a girl. There's a girl. It's the main character, which okay, fine. But they also made you for 3 movies try and figure out who this girl is, and they gaslighted you this whole time thinking that she was important to the story. And then in the second movie, whoever made the decision to do this, they made her completely unimportant to everything. They basically made you feel like, oh, she's not important. Her parents just died somewhere. And then they made the 9th one, and they said, oh, by the way, she's actually the granddaughter of the main villain of the whole series, who is also still alive. And the writing was so sloppy, and there were characters that you didn't care about. There were characters that you didn't know about. And I will never forget when I saw the 9th movie. At the very end, for no reason whatsoever, 2 characters that I don't even think they mention their names, 2 women kiss at the end of the movie. And it's Star Wars. And you're like, Star Wars is a political series and stuff like that, but it's not meant to be politically correct. It just isn't. And fans of Star Wars are probably not out there cheering for this. They're probably scratching their heads. And if I've got some friends that are Star Wars nerds beyond what I am. I'm just a casual fan because of growing up with it. But I have some hardcore fans that are friends, and they will tear those movies apart and say, this was terrible, and this was terrible, and Disney has ruined Star Wars. And it's funny because you're hearing that more and more. Disney has ruined this. Disney has ruined this. And I could see it happening. We see it with these live action remakes, where they're changing lyrics in the songs, they're changing characters' genders, they're changing characters, they're scrapping characters from the movies that weren't there because there was something wrong with them previously. And you just see all of these changes happening, and the question is why? If it's a little kid that's watching this, they're not going to care, about that. But I think sometimes Disney almost... with their recent switch in philosophy, I think sometimes that's it. Like they can market it that way, and it is like you said, parents can feel safe to let their kid, because it's Disney, just here, But if they're not careful, there are things that are there, and I mean it's not only Disney. We've seen it happening even with like Blue's Clues and their drag queen episode where they were doing a pride parade. And, that just turned my stomach when I saw that. And I thought, surely...
Who's that geared to?
What was that? Oh, children. Towards children. Exactly. And it just literally was an entire song about all of the different ways you can be related to the LGBTQ community. And it was just float after float with a different flag on it and explaining what that was to kids. And it made me sick. And I thought, I remember thinking that day, surely Disney will never be like that. And yet here they are, and even in movies that they're marketing as family movies, they're throwing these characters in that nobody cares about. And nobody cares about their gay relationship. And nobody really likes it when it happens because it doesn't fit. And that's the biggest thing. Like I was telling you about that Star Wars thing where it didn't fit in the movie. It was the end. Everybody was celebrating because they had just won the day and won the battle. And yet one of the last things you see is 2 girls kissing. I'm like, if that's not just a slap in the face to say, oh, we're doing this, we're going to push this, whether you want it or not. The same thing with their Marvel shows and stuff like that, which the whole Marvel thing, I mean, Marvel was my Saturday morning cartoons. My brother and I watched Spider-Man like every weekend, and, you know, Batman and Superman and stuff like that. You know, different company there, that's DC. But I mean, the point is, they're taking these things that used to be geared towards children. I mean, you think about, let's go off brand here. Let's talk about Batman and Adam West in the 1960s. My dad showed us reruns of that, and we loved it. You know, Batman was just great. And
I love the little things like the POW.
the Bam and the Pow. Yeah,
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
that. Very family friendly, okay? You know, it's just something that you could watch and enjoy with your family. And then all of a sudden, you look even at the first comic books. I'm a comic nerd myself, but I've read some of the first Batman ones, and they were so different from what you've got today. Everything is so focused on the nitty and the gritty and like these dark storylines where they take a character that may have had a tragic background, and they focus so much on that they're just, everything is so adult now. It's just, everything is so adult. You can't show it to kids anymore
Right.
without them seeing images that are frightening or violent or gory or sexual, and it's just, they don't need to see that. And we see it in all of family entertainment, really. I know I'm a little bit off
That's
track,
true.
but coming back to Disney, Disney was one of the last places I think that parents felt like they could send their kids for quality entertainment and not just something that's like slapped down by animators to
Right.
be family friendly. But it just, you see it sneaking in, and now they're not even ashamed of it. And what really started to make me upset with the company was when Governor DeSantis came up with the parental rights in education, and everybody started calling it the Don't Say Gay bill, and that wasn't even what he was talking about. It was literally trying to protect kids that are between 3 and 12, I think, or in that age group, where they don't need to know about your gender identity. They don't need to know about if you're a lesbian or a gay person, or they don't need to know that. They need to know 1, 2, 3 ABC, pink, blue, red, green, colors, shapes. That's what they learn at that age. They don't need to know what your status is or what your pronouns are.
Wouldn't that be the role of the parent?
It is the role
Not
of the
the
parent.
teacher?
It is. And it frustrated me as I saw people just throwing all of this hate towards him because he was trying to actually let parents be the ones that make those calls in their children's life. And
Why would Disney do that? Why would Disney go after that? Either the joke was internally they never read the bill. I mean, why would they do that? Because that's not, the don't say gay is, they're the ones of the groups that started coming out and kept saying that. Why would they do that? I mean, why would Disney get involved and get in the middle of that and start throwing money at that, by the way,
yeah,
to try to stop that?
And if you read the stories on that, it was actually interesting because Bob Chapek was actually just going to stay out of it, which would be him. I have a very low opinion of him, just the way that he ran things in the very short time he was there. But he wasn't going to really say anything about it at first. And then all of a sudden you have all these employees within the company. And now that we saw that leaked video, they were higher up, and
Right.
they're the ones that were saying, why aren't you saying anything about this? You need to get involved. And they were starting to like strike, and they were starting to complain and whine and gripe like they always do. And the next thing you know, he's out there saying, oh, well, we will throw all of the money that we can to get this appealed, and to get this overturned. And that's not his business. It's not the company's business, and my thought immediately when I was reading all these articles, my heart was sinking because I was thinking, what are you doing? You're supposed to be a family company. It is not your job. It's none of your business.
Right.
What this bill is. You have a park to run, you have movies to make, go do that and get out of the politics. And I even commented on a few videos that I saw online in articles and things, and I even had people attacking me and saying, oh, well, you just need to get with the times, because I would say things like Disney needs to get out of politics and get back to family entertainment. They need to get back to storytelling. And I had people, and they're like, you just need to get with the times and stuff like that. And I was like, no, I don't need to get with the times. This is, these are little kids. And if you're okay with other people invading their parents' roles and telling them what they need to be, and basically telling parents they're not important
Yeah, that's exactly right.
you're wrong. And it's scary. And, most of the people that say these things probably don't have kids themselves. I don't know. But I see a lot in my generation where it's just the blind leading the blind. People just bandwagon, and I'll jump on that because they don't know what to believe for themselves. So I'll just jump onto that. And I think that's what's pushing a lot of this forward is you see it's become a very popular thing or a cool thing to associate with this crowd. And so many people just support it, or they jump on with it, or they say, I'm an ally of that. People should be happy. Now, I mean, obviously, we're looking at this from a worldview of us as Christians. We know God expects us to be separate from that. These people don't. If they're lost, they don't know that side of things, And so, it's just whatever is popular, whatever is new, people just jump on to that bandwagon. And I think that honestly had a lot to do with where the support for what he did came from, is because you had a lot of these employees within the company that were then saying, oh yeah, take that, Governor DeSantis, take that, we're allowed to say the word gay, we're allowed to talk to kids about this and stuff and let them make their decisions about who they want to be, which, I mean, most kids that age probably aren't thinking about the sexuality that they want to have when they grow up. They're probably thinking like, I want to be a firefighter, or I want to be a police officer, or I want to be a business person, or whatever it is. Kids are kids. Yeah. They're not adults. And I feel like Disney is starting to treat them more like adults. And going back to that idea of the rebellion and stuff, that's where it started. And I started to see it in shows when I was a teenager. You would see the dumbing down of parental roles. You would see the father they made the father like the most bumbling character on every show on Disney Channel, which was geared towards tweens and teens. Right. And there was a point where even though we were allowed to watch Disney movies and go to the parks and stuff, there was a point where I was actually not allowed to watch Disney Channel because of that. And so we didn't even have cable anyway, so I couldn't. But when we'd go on vacation or something like that, Mom and Dad would be like, hey, no Disney Channel. It's like, stay away from that, because they saw what I now saw, was that. And so we have to be careful with what we're putting in front of our kids, and we need to know. And I think that's one thing that scares me a lot, is that a lot of people, just because Disney has been a trusted brand for so long, that they feel like they can just put it in front of their kids, and their kids are exposed to this, and parents don't even know. And that's why I think every parent should definitely preview it before they show it to their kid, or watch it with them, so that they can pull the plug when they need to and say, this isn't right. And that's what scares me about children's entertainment, period. Right. But the thing, you're probably wanting to know what got me to flip my opinion on this.
Yeah, what got you to bail? Let
me get to that. So first, you have to understand how invested I was into this. I loved going to the parks. When I moved down here, I was only an hour away from the parks, so I very quickly got an annual pass. And people would come down and visit me, and we'd go to the parks, and I'd show them around. I figured out the fastest way to get onto the rides and stuff like that. We had all these little fun experiences where I could get people with my pass. There was a event they would do where we could get up to 6 people that we would bring in, and they could get a park hopper pass to go to all 4 parks in one day for $80, which is like unheard of there. We would go on these big trips where...
How come I was never invited?
That was before you were the principal.
Oh, okay.
But we would often go there just as icebreakers to spend time with new teachers and stuff, and it was a great way to do that. And we would go, those of us that had passes, we could basically use all our 6 slots and take 6, 12, 18 people at one time, and we'd go down and just take out the parks in one day. We would hit all the highlights of each park. We would say, like, basically tell us if you're wanting like thrills and ride the thrill rides or whatever, or if you're just wanting to like see shows, whatever. And we could map out a day where we could go through all 4 parks from about 8 in the morning until about 1 in the morning, and just go through and do everything. And it was really fun, and we made some great memories like that. And then, of course, I won't be too personal, but like obviously that's where my wife and I went on our first date. So, of course, we had that memory there. And we just became fans of going there. It became kind of a safe place for us to go
Sure.
on dates and things like that, because we were in a crowd of people. So
Sure.
we just enjoyed the adventure of it and going down there and riding our favorite rides or going to watch our favorite shows, trying new restaurants and things like that down there. But really, I think one of the things that we loved about it was because their property is so separate from everything. It's in, like, they call it Disney World. It really is its
own little world.
It's,
Yeah.
I mean, literally, you're away from everything when you're there. And so it really pulls you into this illusion and draws you back to your nostalgia, like I talked about before. I've been there with my parents when they were a lot older than the first time that they went. That's what I'll say. But I saw them just going on a ride or watching a show or meeting one of their favorite characters from when they were a kid, watching Wonderful World of Disney, and just seeing them literally light up like a kid again, and just feeling like they were young again, young at heart. And I think that's what pulls on so many true Disney fans. It's what really pulls on them a lot, is that they remember how they felt when they went there, or they
Sure.
remember that feeling of feeling young again, or just feeling like you're in a place that was meant for families to have a good time together. And that's what Walt Disney made Disneyland to be. He wanted to take his daughters to somewhere where they could be in a clean environment and a safe environment. He would notice how dirty theme parks were at that time, or he'd notice how unsafe they were, or anybody could get in. And he wanted a place that he could take them and allow other families to have that same kind of experience. And if you watch any of the biographies on him and stuff, I know he's not a perfect person, but he definitely had a different idea for his company than what is going on today. I just wanted to make it a place for families to go and just enjoy time together. And that's so important for families, is to spend time together and have those memories, because that's what, when you're grown and you're out of the house and everything, it's what makes you still want to be close to your family, is you've got those
Right.
memories of things that you did or traditions that you did. And so one of the things that I did after moving down here was I very quickly realized I loved going down and staying on property, because, again, just a completely separate area. You just were immersed in whatever
And they're
place you were.
nice properties.
They are nice properties, yes.
Well kept.
Yes. And so when you would go down there, it was just like a distraction from everything, a break from everything, and it was really nice, just a little getaway. And so I ended up becoming a member of the Disney Vacation Club. I had turned it down for many years because there were people that would always try and sell it to you in the parks, and I knew it was a timeshare, and so I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I've seen people get caught up in timeshares, and it's a mess. And so then, long story short, I talked to someone who, as they were selling it to me, they were showing me their own membership card. So I knew what they were telling me was not just a spiel. They were telling me from personal experiences and trips that they had taken. And I realized, if I do this, I can stay in the really nice properties and not have to spend tons of money like most people have to, which that's another thing people talk about, is how outpriced everything is. And I'll get to that in a minute. But so I ended up buying into it, long story short. And with it, I was able to take some really special trips. The first trip I ever took was for my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. We went down there to basically kind of try and recreate their honeymoon experience. And we went down there and we stayed at my home resort, which is Copper Creek Wilderness Lodge. And it's just super relaxing, very quiet, very woodsy and stuff like that. So we go on like walks and things like that, and trails, and it was so nice and so relaxing. And it was just a 4-day trip, but the looks on their faces during that trip were worth everything, because they truly felt like they were young again. And it was really great, and I loved seeing that. And so we got to share that really special time. I was able to spend a week down there for my honeymoon with my wife when we got married, even though it was right after COVID. Things were just starting to reopen again. It was pretty crazy, but we went down there and were able to stay in a really nice resort for an entire week. And it was really nice. So we were feeling like we were on top of the world. We've got this new membership, and we had special privileges with discounts and things like that, and we could get into special places. There was like this place in Epcot you could go and just take a break. They had like snacks up there and drinks and stuff, and that were all free, and you could just sit up there. And I remember one of the last times that we went there, we just went to that lounge and we actually worked on our lesson plans for the next week. But we could just go there and be in that environment, and it was great, and just finish the day watching a fireworks show, a really well done fireworks show. So there's all this positive there, and so I'm telling you that to show you how much I knew I was going to be giving up. And when I first saw this shift in their tone of wanting to push agendas into their movies and stuff, it was like, if I ignore the movies and don't watch them and pretend that they're not even there, I can still go to the parks and have a great time, and I don't have to give all of this up. And I still had people that were like, "Oh, we're waiting to go on our trip with you. You're going to show us around and everything." And so I didn't really want to give it up, to be honest, at first. But I started to see with every new movie that was coming out, especially when they started it with Lightyear, and they said, because Governor DeSantis made this legislation, we are purposely putting a lesbian kissing scene into the movie again that we had taken out. And it was a backlash. They literally lessened the quality of a film because they were backlashing against something that they didn't like, and they were basically weaponizing these movies. So
Right.
oh, well, if you're gonna tell us that we can't say gay, which is not what the legislation said, then we're gonna throw all this stuff in our movies, try and stop us, basically. And then when I saw the footage of those directors, and the one that boiled me wasn't really, the lady that said they were going to try and put 50%,
Yeah.
that got me. But the one that made me the most upset was the one that said, Bob has said nothing to me about my not at all secret gay agenda. Wherever I try and put in, and you can find this, it's on the internet, it's out there. I'm not making
It's
this
on
up.
YouTube.
And she's just sitting there bragging about it and saying,
Yep.
"Oh, I just try and make it my job to put gay and queer wherever I can."
Yep.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, your audience is families, your audience is children, and you're proud of the fact that you have a not at all secret gay agenda, and you're announcing that for now the whole world to see. And then they want to deny that they're doing this. It's like, you are doing this.
Had Iger taken over at that time?
No,
Okay.
I don't believe so. I'm pretty sure the Bob she was referring to
Okay.
was Chapek at that time. He also was a big reason I started to not want to be at Disney anymore, was just with the parks. They were having their 50th anniversary, which should have been what they called the most magical celebration of all time. And they had construction walls up everywhere. And I know part of that was because of COVID, but they had construction walls up everywhere. A lot of what they were doing in the parks never got completed in time. So they had all these big promised plans that they were going to be doing, and they scrapped so much of it. There were all these big things that Chapek was so proud to reveal. And one by one, they all started becoming postponed, which means it's dead. At Disney, it's the code for it's dead. And so, fans were starting to see all these promises just being broken. And it's like, it's not really going to happen. And in the meantime, prices were going through the roof. It was awful. Even with discounts, we were paying way more than any person should ever have to pay. And they were outpricing themselves, and people were getting frustrated. And longtime pass holders and fans, I noticed that they were commenting on articles saying, like, I can't go there with my family anymore just because we can't even afford to go. They have to pay to fly down and stuff like that. The ride system, they came up with this quote unquote brilliant idea to make virtual ride queues for new rides that open. And so because new rides were so popular when they first opened, they were saying, oh, if you want to ride it, you have to join the virtual queue. The only problem was you could only join that at either 7 a.m. in the morning or 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And if you did not get right on to that, you didn't get on the ride for the day. Even if you did get onto the ride, it was running so much that it would break down, which is another thing you see happening right now. The rides break down all the time. A lot more than they used to. And so if a ride broke down and your group was past the time that the park had closed, you didn't ride the ride. And so I remember on our honeymoon, we were going to ride one of the newest rides that had just opened, and we were super excited. And I'm sitting there waiting until my clock rolls over to 1 p.m. so that I can push this button, because it wouldn't let me push it until my clock said 1 p.m. So I push it, and literally right as the clock hits 1, I push the button and it says everything's full. There's nothing available.
Oh,
Try
wow.
again. And so, okay, here's the thing. I was frustrated, but I live an hour away. I can come back and try again.
Sure.
I'm a pass holder. I can get in pretty much for free parking, everything, and just get in and try again. What I saw was families that had brought their families here just to ride this new ride. And
they
it was
never
their
got
last
in.
day, and they don't get to ride it.
Oh,
And you
wow.
should have seen the angry parents that were here and just angry kids. And I'm thinking, this isn't the Disney that people know and love, playing the lottery basically to get onto a ride.
Right. That you paid for.
It's and the funny thing is most people would gladly stand in line for 6 hours to ride this new ride because they'd get to ride it. But when you have to say, oh, we'll save time by joining a virtual queue and you can come back when your boarding group comes.
And then you can't.
And then you
Right.
can't. And so it didn't make any sense. And yet it was like being marketed to everybody. Come ride this new ride. Come ride this new ride. And people are paying and shelling out the money and they don't get to do what they came to do,
Right,
And
right.
I felt bad for those people because they had probably saved up all year long to be able to take this trip,
Right.
and we could just come down anytime we wanted to. They started to realize that pass holders were getting a lot of freebies. So being a pass holder, you lost a lot of your discounts. You lost just a lot. They started making you pay to park your car at the hotels for each night that you were there. So,
all this-
and it was basically like $30 a night to park your car.
Whoa.
So, you're looking at, if you're there for a week, $210 just to park your car. So it got too much out of hand. They took away their free transportation to and from the Orlando airport. So people are just seeing all these cash grabs that they were doing. And Chapek's thing that most people are upset with him about was that he was only a business person. He didn't
Right.
see it from the fans' point of view. He basically hated pass holders. He saw them as like leeches on the company. And it's like, there's a reason they're pass holders. They've been with the brand for ages, and yet you're tearing it down from what it was. And so between all of that, I started to get more and more frustrated. And the times that I was going, it just felt different. And I also noticed that there was a push for the LGBTQ stuff. Before, you would have Pride Week, and that was their thing, like the Pride Week. And you'd see merchandise for it and everything like that. Well, then it became Pride Month, and you would see it all the time, during June,
Right.
all of June. The last few years, it's just there. Like, you can purchase it at any time. And there was, at Disney Springs, there was a photo wall that used to just have like pictures of families and stuff, like a Lego family or something.
Sure.
And when we went back, not during June, there was a Mickey's hands making a gay pride flag heart in the middle. And seeing stuff like that.
Is Mickey gay?
No. No, he's still with Minnie for now. So, but they're trying to change a lot of stuff, and that's ultimately.
I heard Minnie was changing her outfit now.
I heard that too. I don't know exactly what all the details
either.
were, but they are changing everything that they can. One thing that kind of I see as very shady is that supposedly some of the old artwork was lost or destroyed by accident, and it's Walt's drawings, and
wow.
they're redoing them into high definition for the streaming platform, but they're not his original artwork. So that means that if they want to change anything, they
Can do that. And
Exactly. And so
And this is
I don't
what
think it's
Walt
an
would have
accident.
wanted, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's an
Okay.
accident, but the ultimate like nail in the coffin for me was that I started to see these movies that were coming out more and more, and they came out with Strange World, and they were literally shoving in people's faces like, oh, this character is gay. This character is gay. Like, we finally have a gay character as one of the main characters in the movie. And it wasn't just some awkward kiss that didn't fit anywhere in the movie. And it was just being thrown in people's faces. And then they came out with Elemental. Oh, the first non-binary character is going to be in here. And you see all that happening, and it's like, that's what you're excited about? You're not excited about the fact that you have a story or a good, well-written story, and they don't. And it's, these movies, they've become about propaganda, and they're no longer about storytelling. And I think one of the sad parts about Iger is that when he took back over, the parks had been pretty successful under him, not as nearly as good as Eisner before him. But Iger, when he came back, a lot of people heard him say to the public, to the whole world, I think it's time we get our focus back on storytelling. And yet, it's not on storytelling. So all these things that we were hoping would happen when he came back, and that, to be honest, that's what I was holding my hopes on.
You were
was when
hoping
he came back. I was like, okay, it's going to be like it was before. I forgot to talk about this with the parks. They took away the fast pass system, where when you bought a ticket, you got 3 free fast passes for any ride that you could book one for, but you could choose, if it was available, you got one for it. And you could book that. If you booked a hotel, you could book it 60 days in advance so that you knew for sure you were going to ride that ride when you went. And then after you used those 3, you still could make one at a time for the rest of the day at that park or other parks. And it was a great system. They ditched it and they made it to where you had to buy this thing called Disney Genie Plus, and you had to pay for each ride that you wanted to ride, and they're in different tiers. Like if you just wanted to ride Dumbo the Flying Elephant, you pay like maybe, I don't know, like $10 or something like that. I'm off on the prices because I never got it. I was very upset when they came out with it. And then if you wanted to ride the really big one, you're looking at paying like $30 or $40 per person to ride this thing. So not if it's like if you want to get on this ride and not play the lottery to ride it, you're going to pay us $80 for your family to ride it.
So it's the Walt Disney's whole, one of his concepts, I thought, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, one of his concepts was, I'm going to make this park and it's going to be one price. You pay one price and you get in the park and you can ride anything you want to ride. Yeah. And, of course, buy your food and whatever. But that was the whole concept. It was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was the first time a park actually did that.
Right. That's what made it so great.
And now it's they're nickel and diming you to death.
They are. And they've come up with ways to make it better. They finally, I think they took away the resort parking and stuff like that. But, I mean, it's, in my opinion, they're doing too little too late.
Right.
It's like they've done the damage. And the thing is, if they won't own up to the fact that they have messed around with their whole view of what they're doing as a company, and they've made it all about pushing agendas, it just... I don't know. For me, the actual, I told you, the hardest part for me to let go of this was the parks and just the nostalgia there.
And the memory.
And the memories of it. Yeah. But the thing that absolutely I was done was when I saw video footage of a family in Disneyland going to the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. It's where the little girls go to get dressed up as princesses by the fairy godmother and her helpers. Well, I see this video and I see a man probably in his 20s or 30s maybe, with a mustache, and he is in a dress with a little scarf on his head, and he greets a little girl at the door, and says, "Hi, my name is Nick, and I'm fairy godmother's helper, and I'll be helping you around today." And I'm sitting there thinking, why are these parents letting their kid go anywhere near this guy? I mean, and maybe he's not like a creep or whatever, I don't know, but still, I don't want another man dressing my daughter in a princess dress.
If he looks like a creep, if he smells like a creep, he's probably a creep.
I don't want.
What? Let me ask this question: you worked at Disney, and they came to you and said, "Hey, Kevin, we want you to dress up as fairy godmother's helper, but you have to be a woman. Now you can have a beard, but
it doesn't fit with the company." And to me it scared me a lot, because I'm like, my whole thing that I would say to myself to convince myself not to give up on Disney as a company was, I would say, it's not in the parks yet. It's not in the parks yet. And then when I saw that, I was like, it's in the parks. I was like, it's here. I can't stop it. Nobody can stop it. It's here. And they've made this decision. And like, I don't care what agenda you're trying to push. You shouldn't let a man anywhere near dressing your little girl. And like, if I was a dad and he was coming towards my girl, I would pull her away and say, "We're leaving. We're going to complain to management and we're leaving," because that should not be. No. And when you're just doing that because some agenda says that you can, it's wrong. Yeah. And you don't need to be around the kids like that. If you want to be a character, go be Gaston, or go be, the Beast, or Mickey Mouse, or Donald Duck, or something like that. But you don't need to be the fairy godmother's helper. And it goes against the whole movie of Cinderella. You see these things and it's like, it's like they've blinded themselves with this agenda that they can't even see how they're ruining the actual stories in these old movies that Walt Disney and his team animated over the years. And it just, when you see stuff like that, all of the nostalgia in the world doesn't make it right. And it just, you can't. And was I crushed? Yes, I was super crushed. I mean, it was a rough day because it was like, it's here, it's in the parks. And I know someone would say, well, that's Disneyland, that's in California, they're all crazy out there. It doesn't matter. If it starts in one park, it's coming to another one. And I can't put up with that.
Well, now that you're settled that you're done, next week we are I'm going to be putting out, basically it's a documentary. It has to do with Iger, and I'm going to call it A False Flag, and how he participated in that. And this is recent. This is just recent. This was some research that's been recently done. I'm going to put it out next week. It's not been put out anywhere on the internet, what I'm going to put out. But if you're done with them now, when you see that next week, you'll really be done with them. It is absolutely outrageous. And Iger participated in what I'm talking about, and you'll just have to wait till next week because I don't have it completely out yet. But and I had some hope in Iger because I knew, people didn't like him and he did all kinds of bad stuff, and the reason he got out of the company to begin with was because it wasn't doing that great. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Disney realized what they've done, the damage they've done. I'm not sure they're recoverable. I'm really not sure they're recoverable. There's a park that's it's somewhere in the Midwest that's getting ready to be built. It's a patriotic park that's going to be going head to head with Disney. On again, it's in the Midwest though. It's not in it's not in California. It's not in Florida. But there's other ones that are competing like that, and I highly suspect that that Disney's going to be competing with parks on this. And people
they already are. So many people have jumped ship from them to other parks and other companies that it's and every person that's like me that finally admits that they can't keep supporting this,
right? They
pull their support. And I mean, I've pulled out of everything. I don't even have Disney Plus anymore. I actually deleted my entire Disney account just because I wanted them to know I'm done. And when it asked like why was I leaving, I said I can't abide. I can't stick around with the agendas you're pushing. I was like, I don't agree with them. They're wrong, and it's destroyed the entire experience for me and my family. Which it is hard. I mean, right. We're looking at a world where you can't take your kids to Disney anymore. Right. And I mean, that was the worst part because, us just having our son, we were excited to say, oh, let's, we can't wait to take him down there and just get the pictures and get his first pair of Mickey ears and stuff like that. And the traditions and just keep him alive. And it's like, we can't because people decided to push an agenda for money or for publicity or for whatever, and it's just, to me, the most frustrating part is that they will not admit their mistakes. They just won't. They've blamed, all these people are putting out these articles about why movies are bombing from Disney. And they always put as a little aside, almost like a jab at people like us that will say, oh, by the way, like it's because of these extreme radical conservatives that disagree with this one thing or whatever. But they never say it's because we took...
Let me think for that.
They'll push it off onto us, or they'll, but most of the time they'll say, "Oh, the audience doesn't understand what we were trying to go with." I'm like, no, they understand very clearly, and they don't want it, And it's just, a very select group of people want this, and when you see like the screaming minorities getting their way about everything, it ruins all these companies, for people, and it gets to that point where you can't stomach it anymore, and so you just have to leave. And so sure, it stung, but honestly, the last time that I was in Orlando, I remember passing all the signs on the turnpike that I used to be so excited about for Disney, and I thought, oh no, am I going to be sad about it? Am I going to have regrets about pulling out and saying no? And to be honest, I didn't. Because I know it's not the same place, it's not the same people, not the same company. So yeah.
I'm looking at this. I'm looking at an article right now on their. This is their income loss. This is operating income. Now, I'm not talking about their stock. That's another story, and they're crashing on their stock. I haven't seen it at recent times, but I know that they're struggling with that. But they have nearly lost in operating income. They're really close to $1 billion, and that is in operating income. They've had massive layoffs. I don't know if you saw the announcement of that, and they're going to continue going down that road. They're going to continue losing. You can't claim or market yourself as a family-friendly organization and then turn around and not be a family-friendly organization. And you can't blame it on conservatives, okay? Because that's your market. If you want to blame it on somebody, blame it on yourself, because you're the ones that's doing it. You're the one that's driving this into the ground. It's nobody else. And I saw some of the shows and stuff they cut to try to cut their losses, and some of them they kept. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like I asked somebody the other day about it was a Disney show that is basically a cartoon. I can't remember the name of it, but it had a lot of bad stuff in it, stuff that's not appropriate for children. Cartoons, they're normally children's cartoons. This was kind of like Blue's Clues thing. I mean, how many adults just like, hey, I think I'll go watch Blue's Clues today. You don't do that. And it had content in it that I wouldn't know. No parent that had any values, and I'm not even talking about Christian parents. I'm talking about parents that had any level of value, family value. They're not going to let their kids watch this. They're not going to, and there's a reason that they're doing this. There's an agenda that they're doing this, and a lot of it's subtle. Sometimes even as an adult, I don't catch stuff that they put in these things. I don't even catch it. They'll say, "Did you see that?" No, I didn't see it. But they know that they're basically keep pushing this agenda, and when they get called out on it, instead of backing off, they're digging their heels in. And I truly believe that if they continue this process, they will end up spinning the company off, going bankrupt, perhaps. I mean, this down the road, because they've got lots of assets they can start selling off. But that's what they're getting ready to do. It looks like. So we'll see. Well,
and it's interesting because those assets you're talking about, that's going to make things awkward for even the parks, because you have those assets are actually integrated there. They have an entire facility on the property at Disney World that's called the ESPN Worldwide Complex of Sports, and it's tied in with that. You have at Hollywood Studios all of their ABC tie-ins that they had, and I mean that's an easy fix. They just get rid of like the names on it and stuff, but that's still money that they have to spend to change stuff over. So they've definitely had these ties that are in the parks now, that because they're getting rid of stuff, it's going to continue to hurt them for that as well. So I definitely agree. I see them going downhill, and it is sad. But I mean, if they won't claim responsibility for this, and they're going to keep listening to just the minorities that are screaming for more of this, then they're going to tank eventually. And it just, if I have to be part of the reason why they do that, then I have to. But I can't. Is what it is. I can't support it anymore. So
I appreciate so much you coming on and sharing that. I know, I knew that there's issues that really start creeping up, and they started getting worse and worse. And I kept seeing this, and at some point, and like I said, Disney has never backed off. That's the problem. They haven't backed off. They haven't said, "Ooh, that was a bad idea." Oh, that movie tanked because, and I don't know. There's an interview that Iger put out, and he explains every single movie tanked, and he explains why. But none of the reasons were Disney's fault.
Yeah,
none of them. And it's because of this, and all of it was reasons beyond Disney's control. But the bottom line is, every one of them was Disney's fault. Every one of them. It was predicted that some of these movies would tank before they even tank, because nobody wants to watch them, because you're creating an agenda. We want entertainment. We didn't want an agenda, and that's what people are looking for. So anyway, thank you so much for coming on, and definitely be looking, especially next week. I'm gonna put out something that has not been put out. It's not been put out on the internet. It's nowhere out there. But it's literally a false flag that Iger was part of. In fact, he participated in this. And if you're not turned off by all this other stuff, this might right here just say I've had enough of Disney. So thank you again. I appreciate it. God bless you. Keep up the fight. Worldview Truth.